Okay, so one of my viewers, let me go find that comment here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So there's this comment here. My wife is ready to start taking gratefulness meditation and transmission serious. She has been curious and been asking about the original masters of the system. Warms my heart to be able to explain stuff and pass off stories to her that I've heard from this channel. Much gratitude. Um, so I have talked about the masters in the various introduction videos on this channel. You know, the Gratefulness Meditation channel, all these videos everyone should listen to. Like everybody who does them should independently listen to them or listen to them together. Because there's information and details about the practice throughout this channel. There is playlists, and then there's introductions to playlists, and there's explanations, and there's, talks about the system and how to do it and why to do it and all the things that are there. The details matter. And if you were, doing this years ago when there was preceptors and gatherings, you would talk to people who do this practice, and there would be things you would learn from them, and there were books and talks, and Charji would give talks, and there were videos. Of course, you go to the Sahaj Marg YouTube channel. That's great, and watch Charji's videos. The Sahaj Marg, official Sahaj Marg YouTube channel. Most of the videos are pretty good. Some of them have music behind them. I talked to, I wrote a comment about it. The guy said these are the way he finds these videos, so he can't do anything about it. But still, there's ways to connect with the system. There's some videos of Babaji on the Sahaj Marg channel. And so all those things should be taken into consideration. But in this voiceover, and it's a voiceover that's in the Journey series, and also included on my regular channel, but I'm going to leave it up here. And it's something about I end up talking about the lineage of the masters of the system because of the whispers of the brighter world I was talking about. And it came up organically, and then I remembered this person's comment, and so I thought I would leave it here as an independent video, and people can learn about a little bit about the history, the lineage of the masters of the system, and the transmission, and the passing on of the essence of the master from one person to the other, and then how that crapped out with Daji and all that other stuff. So so here it is. Let's get into it here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Sunday, October 26th. This will be the introduction voiceover to the 227th edition of the Journey series. I might put this at the end of a video coming out on Tuesday, perhaps. I think probably that'll happen, but we'll know. Definitely this will be in the Journey series. So there's a Whispers of the Brighter World I want to get to here. This is, just hide the bar. Now they have an AI bar on fucking Adobe. But anyways, Wednesday, October 11th, 2000, 10 a.m. The spirit of Sahaj Marg will live on no matter what happens. There is nothing to worry about on this. Do not let yourself be disturbed by politics in this country. What is good always ends up prevailing. Eddies are useful. They sweep away what is undesirable. Our way is supported by the higher authorities, and it will continue in spite of the madness of humans. Take refuge in this inner space where all is beauty. Disregard the world of which surrounds you. Noticing how it is will not change it. Which is an important thing, for truthers to think about, right? Take refuge in the inner space. Disregard the world around that surrounds you. Noticing how it is will not change it. Contribute to making it advance by doing increasingly refined work on yourself. A luminous work is rising in your heart. Let it be open out completely to the divine presence. Be more and more aware of this unique gift being given to human beings of goodwill. This omnipresence is in them is the most precious asset they can have. It does not come easily. A human being must search for it and deserve it. Your fellow humans will often lose sight of this objective and let themselves be seduced by the false attractions of this world. It's not easy to resist the temptation of an effortless life and its deceptive appearances. Letting oneself be carried away by these kind of human inclinations only bring disturbances and a feeling of frustration. And if such is your case, it is time to react by opening your eyes to the realities of life. Um, I want to go point by point through this thing. So the first part is why I wanted to read this message, but all of it is important. Some of it's for truthers, and some of it's for people who do Sahaj Marg. And so for those of you who are, most of you probably aware of this, but there have been four masters in the Sahaj Marg system. The fourth master, the fourth president, I don't know if you could call him a master, just absolutely failed. He just absolutely whiffed. And, not just whiffed, he went corrupt and got really stupid. It was a bummer. And so the reason that this is a problem in the Sahaj Marg system is because they seem to have cracked the code by having the essence. Like every spiritual movement, there is a desire for a successor. Every spiritual master, every saint, every higher developed soul wants to leave behind somebody that is, carries on this spiritual energy. They're going to be a different person with a different personality, but have the essence of that spirit live on, in the Christ, right? Jesus the Christ, and then Peter the Christ, and then every pope after that. Except Jesus didn't have the capacity to be able to create within his disciples the essence of his own accomplishments. And his accomplishments were, there was still a lot more for him to go on his spiritual journey. And so there was problems with Christianity that you see. And in every religious tradition, every spiritual tradition, there is this idea of being able to pass on the essence, the essence of Buddha, the whatever whatever their phraseology in their particular religion. And there's, spin-off religions in that religion as well, but be able to pass on the essence. And the Sahaj Marg system, there are these 13 yatra points which your soul goes through. And not only the successor of the master, but all the people who are into it, they will go somewhere down the road in these 13 spiritual points, the yatra points. And so there's the heart region, the mind region, and the central region. There's 5 points in the heart region, 5 points in the mind region, and 3 in the central region. So there are people who make it into the central region, and with each of these points, there are various things that go along with it. But for the majority of people who don't become the master, they don't need to have these points completely charged with spiritual energy, and they don't need to have experience of these points to the same level as the succeeding master, right? But after that journey is completed, then the successor is giving a sitting where the master of the system, the master of Sahaj Marg system, transmit his own essence into his disciple. And so these meditations, this spiritual energy. And so this is how the master, the so-called master, was supposed to be kept alive and kept going, right? So the first master, Lalaji, he had about 200 followers, 200 people that came to his house. And people came to his house and he imparted spiritual training. There were no fees, there was no organization, there was no titles. People just recognized he lived in a small village in northern India, not known for spirituality. He was born a Hindu, but he learned from some Sufi, Muslims have the Sufi saints that have penetrated to a spiritual level. They're the spiritual wing of the Muslim tradition. So he learned some spiritual training from them, but mostly he just, was able to connect to God directly. And then his name was Ramchandra, the second master of the system. Actually, somebody said that their wife was starting to practice gratefulness meditation, wanted to know about the masters. So this actually worked out, just in terms of, I'll include this in my regular videos because, this is part of it. So Lalaji was born in a rural village in Fatehgarh, which is, just not a nice place, right? I'm sure it's even kind of worse today. And it's just it's a poor village in northern India. And right next to that village was this village called Shahjahanpur. And another guy named Ramchandra, they both had the same name. And both of these guys worked in courtrooms. They were educated. And so Lalaji was born into a rich family, and then his dad lost all his money because they had a British Raj who just basically stole it. And so his dad basically died of like a heartbreak, and Lalaji's mom died shortly after he was born, or after his brother was born, or something like this. So his mother died like when he was 7 or 8 or something, and his dad was dead, and he was like married when he was 14. To some. They had these childhood marriages where they would just be, or arranged marriages, and the guy, he didn't have anything. He was educated because his dad had money, and so he was fluent in a couple different languages, and he ended up being a court clerk. But he was completely broke when he was a young man, right? He went from being someone who was rich, and their lifestyle as a rich person in India in the late 1800s wasn't the same. And so this guy Babaji came from a family with money. I think his dad was a lawyer. He was educated, but he stopped doing education because he wanted to be an original thinker. He also worked as a court clerk, a babu, so they called him Babaji, right? And he met Lalaji only 7 times in his life, and he didn't stand out. He was a very small person. He was about 5'2", like 115, 120 pounds, just a slight person. And he was like the spiritual phenom. He was Patanjali in a past life, was the father of modern yoga, Ashtanga yoga. And for 13 years after Lalaji died, he intercommuned with him, and Lalaji brought him through all these spiritual points and then transmitted his essence from the brighter world. So this is what gives people hope now in the Sahaj Marg system. And there was only a handful of people left from Lalaji's days by then, and one of them announced that Babaji was his successor. And from there Babaji grew the mission through word of mouth, mostly around India, but he traveled to America and Europe and started following people who met him. He was like Yoda-esque. He was like a Yoda type of a person, spoken these sort of, like an example of that was he started to register this organization, Sahaj Marg, in these various places around the world, registering it as a, religious spiritual organization. And when he was in Europe, it was all these boomer hippies who were rebelling against Christianity and organized religion. They didn't want an organized religion. They liked to be in grassroots, which it, still was. And so somebody asked him, why do you want to be organized? And he said, because I don't want to be disorganized, right? Things like this. And somebody asked him about, can you prove God? Does God exist? And he said, who is this God who is not, right? Things like that. But he wasn't a, good public speaker. He was very simple, probably was dyslexic or something like that. And he wasn't good at the business end of the thing or the organization part of it. And so in 1964, he had been around as master. The organization had been around since 1945. He had a successor, which is Master Charji, the guy I knew, who was a much different person. He was well-educated, Western educated. He came from a Brahmin family in southern India, which was, the other two guys were from like a warrior class that usually didn't produce gurus, or, the Brahmins have a lot of gurus and teachers and politicians and things like that. They're well-educated. And Charji was, he was a salesman. He rose up to a high-ranking, like a CEO of some plastic company in India. He was a successful businessman. He was good at a lot of things, and he was just very adept spiritually. He had been a disciple of Patanjali in a past life, so he had association with the soul of Babaji, and he also had been St. Paul in a previous life. And they traveled together, and he would sort of embellish. Babaji would speak in small sentences, right? He wasn't a person who would talk for, doing what I do here. He wasn't somebody who would, he was very simple in his speech and his approach to life. And Charji would take a few sentences from Babaji and explain them, in 15, 20-minute talks and things like this. And they traveled around Europe and America together. And they were in Copenhagen, Denmark, which was there are a lot of people in Denmark that really like this meditation. And when they were in the airport, Babaji transmitted his essence to him in one of these meditations, these sittings. We sit 5 feet apart, and this transmission is given. These cleanings are given to the practitioner of the system. And he transmitted his essence into Charji, and so that was this epic. Charji kept all this down in his diaries and things, and so there was this element of a continuation of the system. So the fourth master of the system, Daji, there was another guy who was nominated and his life was threatened, and people were like pretty dickish to him, and there was sort of an inner circle around Chargy. Chargy's health was failing, and so that guy quit. He gave it up, and then another guy was made into the master. This guy, Kamlesh Patel, who I had pretty good experiences with. He was a good practitioner of the system. He lived in America. He was a pharmacist, but he just shit the bed. Like, he became really stupid and really corrupt. And even though I saw the work was done for him, like all the spiritual work, I saw him become the master. It just didn't take. And I've documented his corruption, the stupidity behind it, just how fucking, it was just really bad. And so, this continuation of this essence being passed down from one master to another was broken. And, now it's like, well, there's still the transmission. People experience this stuff on the Gratefullness meditation channel that I've created here, and I do sittings as I once was a preceptor and this other stuff. And so, it's still here, and there was this previous 13-year absence from the first master to the second master, and he was able to connect through the brighter world, and there might be some other ways that the system could survive, so it's not like it's unheard of. But the problem was, Chargy was like this epic human being. Like, I can't even explain how much work, his capacity for work, and his commitment, and his just his attention to detail, and what kind of person he was, right? But he had to micromanage all the dumb fucks, like all the people. And there were lots of them, and there was just lots of people wanting to do stupid shit, and he controlled everything because he couldn't turn things over to people because they'd wreck it like it's happened now. And I thought about all the other potential candidates, people who might be able to take over this position, and I don't see anybody that could have, because Chargy, his life was threatened. There was some properties involved. Babaji had one ashram when he died, and there was some organization. There was about 5,000 or 10,000 people who did it. Some people in various countries. A couple hundred people in America doing the meditation. A couple hundred in various places in Europe. Maybe 1,000 across Europe, and 3,000 or 4,000 people in India. And when Chargy took over, he was very popular in South India because he was Brahmin, and there was over 20,000 people just in Chennai alone, maybe even more. And he grew the system. He traveled 200 days a year, spent lots of time in America and in Europe and all these places. And so there was probably about 200,000 people in multiple ashrams, probably worth like $500 million, like acres of land, and all through volunteer donations and things like this. And so he was able to manage all these things. But when he took over, he got poisoned by some people who wanted to kill him for, there was a lot of people that disliked him. They didn't want him to be the master of the system. He had a guy show up with a gun, try to kill him. People just were resentful, didn't like him. Took a long time for people to accept him. A lot of people quit. And, there was people who wanted, even when Babaji took over philology had to protect him on a spiritual level and warn him. These people were trying to kill him. And there's only 200 fucking people, right? So, there's, and a lot of people wanted to, move this into a materialistic religious thing. There was people around Chargy that were absolute pieces of shit that Chargy called out in an epic talk I've played here. It's been on this thing a few times. I've showed it. People have seen it in various, it exists on the Sahaj Marg channel and other places, the official Sahaj Marg channel. But he talked about how these people in the inner circle were absolute pieces of shit. Like, he was just unloaded on them towards the end of his life. So, with all that, and the fact that there's, now $1 billion worth of properties, there really wasn't anybody who could take over the mission and deal with all the fucking, things just get shitty the more people you get, unfortunately. People don't make things better. There's the original people, like there's the original guy, and there's the original, like with Jesus, the 12 disciples, and there's some other people here or there, and then, by the time you get into like 1 million or 1 billion Christians, it's pretty shitty. The organization's shitty. It's now completely watered down, and it's pandering to the dumb fucks and all that stuff. And so, there really wasn't a good person to be a successor. the people would have chewed him out, chewed him up, and nobody wanted to take on Chargy when he was a full-fledged master, like he had developed into a master. So this guy Dodgy, although he shouldn't be let off the hook, there really wasn't a solution here. So who knows how it's going to go in the future. But right now it looks doubtful, like it's completely blind faith, because the organization I can't even explain how bad it's gotten. So when he says this, the spirit of Sahaj Marg will live on no matter what happens. So like the essence of this will still be here. It's just up to people to pick it up. It's up for people to get it on their own without an organization. There's things like I'm doing with the Gratefullness meditation and word of mouth, but also people are just going to have to connect directly, which is what we've done with the Gratefullness thing. There's nothing to worry about this. Do not let yourself be disturbed by politics in this country. This woman who takes down these messages is in France, and there was Sahaj Marg made it on the cult list, and so it was a bad time there for that. What is good always ends up prevailing. Eddies are useful. They are swept away. They sweep away what is undesirable. Our way is supported by the higher authorities, and it will continue in spite of the madness of humans. Well, I think this is a long-term project that's supposed to span 10 or 20,000 years, which is the longest of any kind of spiritual organization, this kind of movement. So it might take 10 or 20,000 years for everybody to rise up to this level. It might take people maybe 15, 20 lives of doing it before they really get it and they're able to move forward and like raise their level of consciousness. So that's that part. Take refuge in this inner space where all is beauty. Disregard the world which surrounds you. Noticing how it is will not change it. And I say this a lot to people in the truth community, that we're in the automatic phase. Everything's going to happen. It's already happened in the future. There's no blocking it. There's no stopping it. But we can prepare for what's happening internally and also externally. A luminous day is rising in your heart. Let it open out completely to the divine presence. Be more and more aware of this unique gift being given to human beings of goodwill. The omnipresence, the omnipresence in them is the most precious asset they can have. It does not come easily. A human being must search for it and deserve it. That speaks for itself. People need to embrace their inner, their potential saint within, this soul within, the master within. Your fellow humans often lose sight of this objective and let themselves be seduced by false attractions of this world. Again, we all know that. It's not easy to resist the temptation of effortless life and its deceptive appearances. We all understand that. Let oneself be carried away by these kinds of human inclinations only brings disturbances and a feeling of frustration. Everybody probably understands that. If such is your case, it's time to react by opening your eyes to the realities of life, Babaji. These messages and the transmission is given to everybody. When Chargy once said that there was all these disembodied souls that used to come to gatherings and, higher developed souls that would to receive the transmission from, disembodied souls that were like angels and higher developed souls, because it's just a unique situation what's being given here. In the Sahaj Marg, Gratefullness meditation, it's linked in the description box of all of my videos. And so, like the transmission is there for everybody. These messages were given to this woman, but they were there for everybody. Like everybody received them, whether, they were able to connect with them or not. And so these messages are, messages coming from what's called the brighter world, whispers of the brighter world from, what people think about in terms of heaven, but it's, heaven is not an accurate description of what happens there. But, this is all there for everybody. So why doesn't everybody pick up on it? Why is, people not embrace it, right? People come to this channel, and some people like the comedy, like me mocking people, like this stuff. Some people don't like it at all. The majority of people come and go. The majority of people that have, I've had millions of viewers here. I've had 100 and something, 200 million views or something like that, maybe more. Some of my videos have been deleted, so those videos don't count. But I have, 100, at least 150 million views or something here. And then I have so many different people, some of those views are repetitive views, who come here and they hear something and they get pissed off, they don't like it, and they leave. Or some people who, they just don't get it, most people, 90%. But then the people who do, and in that there's a small group of people that feel the spiritual energy, and there's the part of them that want to get into it. And so it's just a fraction of the people that come through this channel. And, I think there's a lot of smart people, a lot of developed people that come here. And so I think it's, I think I get less dumb fuck than the average person. People in truth community, true truthers are, cut above the average person. And so in terms of their consciousness level. And so it's a real tragedy for humanity that people just don't get into it. Anyways, okay, so the next message looks promising as well. Friday, October 13th, 2010 a.m. Our way is acquiring a new status which will enable it to a certain extent, to balance the negative powers that are rampant all over the world. This century will long be a transitional period. Again, this is in 2000. A balance should be established and hatred between peoples calm down. A major cleaning is necessary to soften the customs of those who are the most determined to harm and destroy what doesn't resemble them. So that is supposed to happen this century. There's prophecies in there about that. A complete, World War III nightmare, cataclysms, upheavals. Only love can soothe resulting injuries. It's heartbreaking to see how the same events reoccur periodically. Learn to master your thoughts so they emit in vibrations of peace and love. It is your only recourse in this dilemma, where old hatreds are maintained in these countries close to yours, which risk destabilizing peace in Europe. Do your best with means at your disposal. You are peace soldiers. You have our blessings, Babaji. So, something, right? That, speaks for itself. There's one more that goes along with this from that period. Thursday, October 12th, 2000, same time period, 10 a.m. The human being often ventures on tortuous paths before taking the right direction. This is a human characteristic. A person must find the way after many experiences, sometimes painful. This is how the personality is forged, which leads each one to seek a truth that starts to be obvious to them. A person feels that this lack comes from a life centered on materialism. Their deepest being is in need. They aspire to fill this void through a pursuit and an understanding that can satisfy them. That is the start of a quest that can bring a person to the highest level. If their aspiration is strong enough, each one receives what they are able to receive. A sincere, constant call must be made so that it can be heard, and then the way will open up before the person and will be adapted to their level of evolution. Perhaps they will reach us. Do you realize how lucky you are? To be on a path with few constraints, which makes you advance without requiring great efforts. Is this not a grace? There is every hope for you. If you take your work to heart, we do everything possible to meet your expectations. We see the heart of your hearts, and they receive according to their capacity. 5 p.m. meditation in parentheses. It is a very necessary evil. It is necessary to answer evil with love. Sahaj Marg is entering a new era whose effects will not be felt immediately. Its strength will manifest itself more and more in the future, Babaji. So, there's that. And I should add that these whispers are called the Whisper a Day. Everybody can subscribe to them. They're still part of the official dodgy organization, but he hasn't corrupted he's corrupted that part about, but not these messages. And there's also some other things available. All the heartfulness stuff sucks, but they used to put out quotes. I don't know if they still do that. And there's books online that you can read. There's books that everyone should read. There's the complete works of Ramchandra that's available on from the Sahaj Marg official Sri Ramchandra mission. There's still the website's still up from the original Sahaj Marg, and there are those books up, and also there's the Babaji kids. They formed their own mission because they were kind of dickish, but they have some books published as well that you can read. They're all the same books, so even it doesn't matter about the organization. They're there for people to read for free, and then all these books are available. And I talk about this in some of the, if you listen to all the introductions to the playlists, and there's a playlist that explains the system, and there's a video that at the beginning of this, the channel video, and people should watch those things and rewatch them, and it talks about the resources that people can have here. But anyways, let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the Apocalaughs. And the Ascension, everyone have a blessed day, and be grateful.